Hello, dear viewers, and welcome to the world of mysterious and thrilling crimes, where we dive together into the secrets of the most famous and legendary crimes in history. Today, we'll travel back to 1950 to tell the story of a crime described as the perfect crime, one that almost was, until its threads began to unravel bit by bit. Join us as we explore the details of the most famous heist in U.S. history, the Brink's Bank robbery in Boston, where a skilled gang succeeded in stealing over $1 million at the time, challenging both security systems and people alike. But did the gang achieve their goal? And how did the FBI manage to uncover this complex mystery? Subscribe to the channel and join us as we continue uncovering the secrets of great crimes that left their mark on the pages of history. The Brink's robbery of 1950, the crime of the century that fell apart from within. It was described as the perfect crime and the crime of the century, and it nearly was, until the FBI and its partners cracked the case with great effort. On the evening of January 17, 1950, employees of the Brink's Security Company, which provided services for banks, businesses, and jewelry stores in Boston, Massachusetts, were closing up for the day. They were bringing bags of money, checks, and other undelivered items back to the company's vault on the second floor. Just before 7:30 p.m., they were surprised by 5 heavily disguised men, silent as mice, wearing gloves to avoid leaving fingerprints and soft-soled shoes to reduce noise. The robbers quickly tied up the employees and began moving the loot. Within minutes, they had stolen more than $1.2 million in cash and another $1.5 million in checks and bonds, making it the largest robbery in the United States at the time. As the robbers fled the scene, a Brink's employee called the Boston Police Department. Minutes later, the police arrived at the Brink's building, and FBI agents soon joined the investigation. Initially, the investigators had very little information. Interviews with the 5 employees who faced the criminals revealed that 5 to 7 robbers had entered the building. All were dressed in navy peacoats, gloves, and chauffeur hats, with their faces fully concealed behind Halloween masks. To muffle their footsteps, one gang member wore rubber-soled shoes, while others wore rubber boots. The robbers spoke little and moved with calculated precision, indicating that the crime had been meticulously planned and rehearsed over the preceding months. Somehow, the criminals managed to unlock 3, possibly 4, locked doors to reach the second floor of Brink's, where the 5 employees were busy sorting and storing money collected that day. All 5 employees were forced at gunpoint to lie on the floor. Their hands were tied behind their backs, and tape was placed over their mouths. During the robbery, one employee's glasses were lost. They were never found in Brink's property afterward. While the loot was being placed in bags and stacked between the second and third doors leading to the Prince Street entrance, an alarm sounded. The robbers removed the tape from one employee's mouth and discovered that the alarm meant someone was trying to enter the vault area. The person ringing the bell was a garage employee. 2 gang members moved toward the door to capture him, but seeing the garage employee move away without realizing a robbery was taking place, they did not pursue him. In addition to the general descriptions provided by the Brink's employees, investigators collected several pieces of physical evidence: the rope and tape used to restrain and gag the employees, and a single chauffeur hat left behind by one of the robbers. The FBI learned that the gang had stolen 4 pistols. Descriptions and serial numbers of these weapons were carefully noted, as they could be a valuable link to the men responsible for the crime. In the hours following the robbery, the crime world began to feel the pressure of the investigation. Known criminals in Boston were arrested and questioned by the police. The pressure quickly spread to other cities from Boston. Veteran criminals across the United States found that their activities in mid-January were now the subject of official inquiries. Because Brink's was in a densely populated area, it took many hours to interview people in the neighborhood who might possess valuable information. A systematic check was made of current and former Brink's employees. Building staff in the 3-story building housing Brink's offices were questioned, and inquiries were made regarding vendors, messengers, and others who had visited Brink's and might have known its layout and operational procedures. An immediate effort was made to obtain descriptive data regarding the missing cash and bonds. Brink's clients were contacted for information on the packaging and shipping materials they used. All identifying marks on the currency and bonds provided by clients were recorded, and a proper stop was placed in banking institutions across the country. The Brink's case was front-page news. Even before Brink's offered a $100,000 reward for information leading to the arrest and conviction of those responsible, the case had captivated the imagination of millions of Americans. Well-meaning individuals from across the country began sending tips and theories to the FBI in hopes of helping the investigation. For instance, a citizen in California suggested that the loot might be hidden in the Atlantic Ocean near Boston. The FBI had already conducted a detailed survey of the Boston waterfront. Former prisoners in correctional institutions reported conversations they overheard about the Brink's robbery. Each of these clues was examined, but none proved fruitful. Many other types of information were received. It was reported that a man with limited means in Bayonne, New Jersey, was spending large sums in nightclubs, buying new cars, and displaying new wealth. An extensive investigation was conducted regarding his whereabouts on the evening of January 17, 1950, but he was not connected to the Brink's robbery. Rumors from the criminal world suggested suspicion fell on several criminal gangs. Members of the Purple Gang from the 1930s found renewed interest in their activities. An old gang specializing in bootlegging in the Boston area during Prohibition became the subject of inquiries. Again, the FBI's investigations yielded only the elimination of more potential suspects. The Bureau received many tips from anonymous sources. On the night of January 17, 1952, exactly 2 years after the crime, the FBI office in Boston received an anonymous phone call from an individual claiming he would send a letter identifying the Brink's robbers. The information received from this individual linked 9 known criminals to the crime. After careful investigation, the FBI eliminated 8 suspects. The 9th man had long been a primary suspect and was later arrested as a member of the robbery gang. Of the hundreds of criminals in New England contacted by FBI agents in the weeks immediately following the robbery, few were willing to be interviewed. Occasionally, a criminal facing a jail term boasted of having hot information. "If you release me, I'll solve the case in no time," these criminals would claim. A Massachusetts swindler, a man with a long-standing criminal reputation, revealed to the agents interrogating him, "If I knew who carried out the robbery, I wouldn't be talking to you now because I'd be too busy trying to figure out a way to get some of the loot." In its determination not to overlook any possibility, the FBI reached out to various resorts across the United States for information about individuals known to possess unusually large amounts of money after the robbery. Racetracks and gambling facilities were also covered in the hopes of finding some of the loot in circulation. This aspect of the investigation concerned many gamblers. Some stopped their operations, while others expressed a strong desire to help identify and apprehend the robbers. The vast amount of information gathered in the first weeks of the investigation was continuously processed. All efforts to identify gang members through the chauffeur hat, rope, and tape left at Brink's proved unsuccessful. On June 2, 1950, O'Keefe and Gushiwara left Boston by car, allegedly to visit Gushiwara's brother's grave in Missouri. They seem to have planned a leisurely trip with a series of side activities. On June 12, 1950, they were arrested in Towanda, Pennsylvania, found in possession of weapons and clothing taken from robberies in Kane and Coudersport, Pennsylvania. After their arrest, one of the former guarantors in Boston made repeated trips to Towanda in a failed attempt to secure their release on bail. On September 8, 1950, O'Keefe was sentenced to 3 years in the Bradford County Jail in Towanda and fined $3,000 for violating the Uniform Firearms Act. Although Gushiwara was acquitted of charges in Towanda, he was transferred to McKean County, Pennsylvania, to face trial for robbery, theft, and receiving stolen goods. On October 11, 1950, Gushiwara was sentenced to 5 to 20 years in Western Pennsylvania Penitentiary in Pittsburgh. Even after these convictions, O'Keefe and Gushiwara continued to seek their release. Between 1950 and 1954, rumors occasionally circulated in the criminal underworld about pressure on Boston criminals to contribute financially to the legal battle against the charges facing these 2 criminals in Pennsylvania. Names like Pino, McGinnis, Adolph Jazz Maffei, and Henry Baker were frequently mentioned in these rumors, with reports indicating they were associated with O'Keefe in the big job. Despite the lack of reliable evidence and witnesses in the legal proceedings, as the investigation progressed, there was little doubt that O'Keefe was one of the key figures in the Brink's heist. Pino's name was also linked to the robbery, and there was strong suspicion that O'Keefe felt abandoned by Pino now that he was imprisoned. Both O'Keefe and Gushiwara were repeatedly questioned about the Brink's heist, but they claimed complete ignorance. Hoping a significant rift might have developed between the criminals detained in Pennsylvania and the gang members living freely in Massachusetts, FBI agents once again visited Gushiwara and O'Keefe. Even in their cells, however, they showed no respect for law enforcement authorities. While following up on underworld rumors about the main suspects in the Brink's case, the FBI managed to identify more probable members of the gang. Adolph Jazz Maffei, One of the criminals allegedly pressured to contribute money to O'Keefe and Gushiwara's legal battle against authorities in Pennsylvania was questioned about his whereabouts on January 17, 1950, but he could not provide specific details about his location. Henry Baker, another veteran criminal rumored to be contributing to the Pennsylvania Defense Fund, had spent several years of his adult life in prison. He was released on bail from the Norfolk Prison Colony, Massachusetts, on August 22, 1949, just 5 months before the robbery. Baker was serving 2 concurrent terms of 4 to 10 years, imposed on him in 1944 for breaking and entering and possession of burglary tools. When Baker was released in 1949, Pino was present to drive him to Boston. When questioned by Boston police the day after the robbery, Baker claimed he had dinner with his family on the evening of January 17, 1950, then left his home around 7 p.m. to walk around the neighborhood for about 2 hours. Since he claimed he did not meet anyone or stop anywhere during his walk, he could have done anything on the night of the crime. Another prominent suspect was Vincent James Costa, Pino's brother-in-law. Costa was associated with Pino in running a car station and a lottery game in Boston. He was convicted of armed robbery in 1940 and spent several months in the Massachusetts State Reformatory and Norfolk Prison Colony, Massachusetts. Costa claimed that after working at the station until about 5 p.m. on January 17, 1950, he went home for dinner, then left around 7 p.m. to return to the station and worked until around 9 p.m. The FBI's analysis of the alibis given by the suspects showed that 7 p.m. on January 17, 1950 was frequently mentioned, as if it had been prearranged. O'Keefe left his hotel around 7 p.m. Pino and Baker each decided to go out at 7 p.m., and Costa returned to the car station at around 7 p.m. The other main suspects could not provide convincing accounts of their activities that night. Since the robbery occurred between approximately 7:10 and 7:27 p.m., it was very likely that the gang, which appeared highly organized like the Brink's robbers, had arranged to meet at a specific time. By setting this time close to the moment the robbery was supposed to begin, the robbers had alibis covering their activities up to the last minute. Any doubts the Brink's gang might have had about the FBI being on the right track in its investigation were dispelled when the federal grand jury began its sessions in Boston on November 25, 1952, regarding this crime. The FBI's mandate to investigate this robbery was based on the fact that cash, checks, postal notes, and U.S. money orders from the Federal Reserve and Veterans Administration in Boston were included among the stolen items. After nearly 3 years of investigation, the government hoped that long-silent witnesses or participants would speak up before the grand jury. However, this proved to be a false hope. After concluding its sessions on January 9, 1953, the grand jury retired to consider the evidence. In a report issued on January 16, 1953, the grand jury stated that its members did not feel they had complete and positive information on the identities of the participants in the Brink's robbery due to, first, the participants' effective disguise, second, the lack of eyewitnesses to the crime itself, and third, the refusal of some witnesses to testify, whom the grand jury could not compel to do so. The 10 individuals who appeared before this panel were relieved to learn that no charges were brought against them. Nearly 3 years later, almost to the same day, these 10 men, along with another criminal, would face charges by the state grand jury in Boston for the Brink's robbery. Following the federal grand jury sessions, the FBI's intensive investigation continued. The Bureau was convinced it had identified the real robbers, but evidence and witnesses still needed to be found. While O'Keefe and Gushiwara remained in prison in Pennsylvania, Pino faced his own difficulties. Pino, born in Italy in 1907, was a young child when he entered the United States, but he never became a naturalized citizen. Due to his criminal record, the Immigration and Naturalization Service began proceedings to deport him in 1941. This occurred while he was in the state prison in Charlestown, Massachusetts, serving his sentence for breaking and entering with intent to commit a crime and possessing burglary tools. This punishment, along with Pino's conviction in March 1928 for sexually assaulting a girl, laid the foundation for deportation proceedings. Pino was determined to fight the deportation. In the summer of 1944, he was released from state prison and detained by immigration authorities. During the previous year, however, he had filed a petition for clemency, hoping to remove one of his criminal convictions from his record. By September 1949, Pino's efforts to avoid deportation had succeeded. He was granted a full pardon by the acting governor of Massachusetts. This pardon meant that his record no longer held the second conviction. Consequently, the Immigration and Naturalization Service had no grounds to deport him. On January 10, 1953, after Pino's appearance before a federal grand jury concerning the Brink's case, he was again arrested as a deportable alien. The new proceedings were based on the fact that Pino had been arrested in December 1948 for theft involving less than $100. He received a one-year sentence for this crime. However, on January 30, 1950, the sentence was vacated, and the case was filed. On January 12, 1953, Pino was released on bail pending a deportation hearing. Once again, he was determined to fight, arguing that his 1948 theft conviction was not grounds for deportation. After he surrendered in December 1953 in compliance with an order from the Immigration and Naturalization Service, he began an additional battle to secure his release while his case was under review. The ongoing pressure exerted on him by O'Keefe from the prison in Towanda, Pennsylvania, added to these troubles. In the deportation battle that lasted more than 2 years, Pino achieved the final victory. His case reached the country's highest court. On April 11, 1955, the Supreme Court ruled that Pino's 1948 conviction for theft, the sentence of which had been vacated and the case filed, did not attain that degree of finality to support a deportation order. Therefore, Pino could not be deported. During the period in which Pino's deportation troubles were escalating, O'Keefe completed his sentence in Towanda, Pennsylvania. He was released to the authorities of McKean County, Pennsylvania, in early January 1954 to face trial on charges of robbery, theft, and receiving stolen property. He also faced a detainer from Massachusetts authorities related to his parole violation in connection with his 1945 conviction for possession of concealed weapons. Before his trial in McKean County, he was released on $17,000 bail. While on bail, he returned to Boston. On January 23, 1954, he appeared in Boston Municipal Court for parole violation. When this case was continued until April 1, 1954, he was released on a $1,500 bail. During his brief stay in Boston, he was noted to have made contact with other members of the robbery gang. He needed money to defend himself against the charges in McKean County, and it was evident that he had developed a bitter attitude towards several close criminal associates. He returned to Pennsylvania in February 1954 to face trial, where he was found guilty of robbery in McKean County on March 4, 1954. An appeal was immediately filed, and he was released on a $15,000 bail. O'Keefe promptly returned to Boston to await the outcome of the appeal. Within 2 months of his return, another gang member faced legal trouble. Jazz Maffey was convicted of federal tax evasion and began serving a 9-month prison sentence at the federal prison in Danbury, Connecticut in June 1954. Rumors from the criminal underworld claimed that Maffey and Henry Baker had cheated O'Keefe out of a significant amount of money. Baker, hearing these rumors, did not wait long to see if they were true. Shortly after O'Keefe's return in March 1954, Baker and his wife left Boston on a vacation. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notifications to stay updated. The story isn't over yet. Stay tuned for part 2 of this terrifying tale, where more secrets and surprises will be revealed. Get ready for something even deeper and more thrilling.